retail sales chatbot that we've got going here. And what I want to start with is just asking it with what the monthly sales were. And actually, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Okay, looks better. So we'll actually start by asking, what were the monthly sales? And as this is kind of formulating its answer, hopefully my internet connection is still good here. Okay, here we can actually see it starting to go. It's starting to execute the sequence based on the semantic models that it's got access to with Cortex Analyst. It's starting to reason through that SQL, as well as telling us like, hey, you actually don't have 12 months of data due to the fact that my data ends in December 2025. So it's calling out the fact that like what you're asking for isn't actually even available, but I'm going to give you what I can. And I think that's also a really important part, right? Is like the agent actually understanding when it can't complete your response as requested, and then calling that out for you, right? So you want to be able to know when those things are happening so that you can either, fix the underlying issue, change your question accordingly, but then make sure you're getting the response that you're looking for. So we can see in here all the key findings that it's coming back with, and providing them the data that we could further explore or chart, and then we finally get this nice little view of our sales for 2025. So we can see it's calling out this some month-to-month variation, things like that. But what I'd like to do next is really take a look at this big jump in sales in June, and actually see like, can Snowflake Intelligence help us understand what caused that? So I'm going to copy and paste this because I won't torture you by trying to type live. And we'll see what caused the sales spike in June. So this is gonna start to reason through this, and hopefully, since this is a live demo, one never knows, but we're gonna start by looking at the data. It's gonna confirm that what I'm actually what I'm telling it to look into actually exists. So it's gonna, first thing it's gonna do is probably confirm there was a spike in June. And now it's starting to analyze, what was happening during that time, who was having more success. Is this success tied to a specific salesperson, a specific region? So it's really starting to dig into those results, and we're seeing, it's executing a verified query here, and hopefully down here, we can see the next steps that it's planning and figuring out, what to compare this to next. So as we go through this, we'll skip the SQL here, and we're going to see that it's jumped now from the sales data to the marketing data. So these are different Cortex analysts behind the scenes that this is doing. There's like a Cortex analyst for the sales data mart, there's one for the marketing data mart, and the agent has access to both of them. And they're actually going to also, it's going to take a look at marketing activity and sees that there is, certain activity in June, but then it's also going to look at our unstructured data. So it's taking these marketing strategy documents that we have and trying to see, is there anything specifically in that might also tie to this sales spike. So we can ultimately here we see the kind of summary of all of the different results. And when I was working on this demo and ran this earlier, I was thinking, this didn't look at the unstructured data the way I originally wanted it to. So what I did, and I'm actually gonna jump over into our agent's developer UI, which is really small, and show you kind of the orchestration instructions that are present. And so, I have been working with the agents and Cortex analyst for a while now, but I still am horrible when it comes to writing these instructions from scratch. I immediately cannot think of a thing to tell the agent to do. So, but I am pretty good at giving it feedback. So what I'm able to do is say, okay, I didn't quite like the way you gave me those results, so I'm gonna tell you what I was hoping you would do. And so this is where, you know, I can say, how can I make the agent actually do something do this other type of analysis? And the Cortex code in the UI here is going to take a look at the agent, its definition, and it's going to provide some suggestions with how I can update the orchestration instructions. So, super powerful way to, you know, kind of complete this little feedback loop as you're working through this. And you know, it's not going to just tell me what I should update that instruction to do, but it's, you know, going through the process of also telling me like how I can update it, how I can verify I have all the correct stuff underneath. So it's really, really useful in order to, you know, kind of have this full the ability to, you know, have these interactions in the Snowflake Intelligence interface, but then be able to use Cortex code to go and immediately refine it and improve on how it's going to perform for me. So go back to Snowflake Intelligence. What we're going to do now is toggle that extended thinking mode on, and so I'm going to ask it for you know, a little bit deeper of an understanding of what's going on, and so I'm going to say, you know, were these marketing, and I'm not gonna lie, this is really small for me, so I can't entirely read exactly what the response was. So we'll say, were these marketing campaigns, you know, part of any strategic initiatives? And this is where I am crossing my fingers that it's actually going to look at some of these strategic documents and kind of connect the dots, and then actually give us access to the citations of where that content is actually coming from, so that we could go to those documents, see exactly where this information is coming from. And you know, it reminds me a lot of I use Glean internally a lot at Snowflake, and you know, it's similar to the way that's providing citations of this came from Slack or this came from Google Drive. You know, that's what Snowflake is trying to do as well. And you can see down here, unfortunately, it just keeps generating stuff, so I can't actually hover on this, but there we go. We can see the sources of the strategy document, and I can, you know, actually take a look at that and see it there. So that extended thinking mode is going to really try to parse the contents of that document, dig a little bit deeper to connect the dots, as I said earlier, and try to understand, you know, can we draw more conclusions, even if we're not mentioning June 2025 explicitly in the document, but can we tie that marketing spend or that campaign spend to this initiative? So I'm going to turn extended thinking off, and well, actually, I might do one more thing. So in addition to this, I'm actually going to upload a file as here's our survey results, and so sorry about that. And what we're going to ask it is, let's say we just got a preliminary report back from the company that we hired to analyze, to do this customer survey and analyze these results. So we're going to add that in. You know, the data is not, all the raw data is not in the system yet, but we're going to hopefully be able to glean something from this. And so we'll provide it that PDF and actually start parsing through that and figure out how to tie the performance in with the customer survey result to see, you know, if there's any actions that we should be taking in real time right now to, you know, respond to what the customer feedback is. So we're going to go through all of this, and you'll notice you can copy any of the SQL. You can run it yourself, make modifications to it. That's all, you know, part of the package for you. And so this is gonna hopefully, you know, figure out that what these survey results are actually telling us, and then eventually provide us some next steps on how we might respond to those from a sales and marketing standpoint, really. Okay. And this is the beauty of extended thinking mode, because it just keeps going. So we can see that it is starting to kind of circle back to some correlations, some insights here, to see where our highest revenue and highest satisfaction are correlated, and then also where there's high revenue and low satisfaction, right? Because that's something that could potentially be at risk if our customers aren't satisfied with it. So we'll go on now to the next section here. We'll talk a little bit about the verified answers, but I think we'll actually just take a look here, because we see that trusted verified answer available to us right here, so we know that that's something that somebody behind the scenes has validated that it's real. And then if we look at the Cortex analyst behind the scenes, it's actually providing us suggestions on what, like we can see here what the verified queries are, and then we want to also look down here and we can see these are potential verified queries based on the usage patterns on the data. So it's a pretty simple process to review the query, validate the semantic query and its results, and then decide whether or not you're going to validate that, or if there's modifications that need to be made. So it's all, again, available through the UI. It can also be done via code, but this is really opening up who is able to interact with the agents and the analysts and the semantic views in order to get you these results. So we also, I'm actually going to skip forward because I'm almost at time here, and we're just going to look at the governance piece as well. So I'm going to switch to my alter ego, Catherine, and this is a user that only has a low-level business analyst access to the data. So what I want is to actually see customer names and addresses for our top accounts. So I'm going to actually ask this here, and hopefully I shouldn't be able to see, as a random person in the company, I shouldn't just be able to look up customer names and see who has access to the data. So we have that set up for data masking based on the user role, and this is going to actually understand that, one, we don't have address information, so it's gonna call that out and say, that would have been nice, but you don't have that yet. And then it's going to also see that it doesn't have, that it has access to that data, but you can't actually see the customer name. So that's where it's going to, it usually will tell us, like, hey, this customer name value is all the same for everybody, but I'm still going to provide you some results. And yes, okay, so in this case, right, it's saying, I can't find the names, so I need you to, but this is what I could do for you. So that's what we're gonna do, is we're gonna say, like, okay, yeah, I wanna see the revenue by customer, even if I can't see the customer name. And so that's what's gonna go through here and show me some of these top results. So that's just one way that, and this is a little quirk here that I could actually tell this, that it's grouping by the customer name masked value, right? And that's not what we actually want. What we want to do is we want to see this by the customer key. So let's see if we can get that to actually then parse out which customer has what value, even if we can't see the name of that customer. So, and this is something, again, where we could go back into the agent orchestration instructions and actually tell it that this is how we would like to calculate this in the future, right? And I could basically, what I've done before is I even pull off the request ID from, when this returns its result, every result will have a request ID, and I've even given that request ID to Cortex code and I say, this is the request I had, this is the result I got, this is the result I want, how do I make the agent get there? And it pretty much figures it out every time, and a lot faster than I probably could. So we're gonna, so we can see the masking is working here. We've got this now by customer key. You know, it was able to understand what I was asking it to do when I asked it to make that change. And we can go back to the we can go back to, you know, the full access control and admin view and see everything there. So one other thing I'm going to show you really quick about the agents is the level of, if I cancel out of this and close Cortex code here, we can actually look at the monitoring and see all of the queries that have happened in the last day. We can dig into each one of these and understand more on the traces and everything that was happening. Here's like the span tracing of all the different parts of the process. So you get all that total level of visibility into, you know, how the model's working and then what tweaks you can make after the fact. So I'm way over time, so I'm just going to wrap things up here. And if we, you know, go back to the slides real quick so we can show that QR code at the end. You know, this is how you get started, right? And I think we've kind of reviewed that today pretty much in terms of getting from the data to creating an agent, the users, the insights, right? And I think the key part here is iteration, right? Like this is not like you build this enormous thing right from the start, right? You start with an agent, you start with an analyst, you start with the service, and you continue to grow it and iterate as your users access it and give you feedback, and you end up with something that's very, very useful to them. So we talked a little bit about Cortex code, and you know, if you're interested in starting with Snowflake Intelligence, here's a guide to do that. So, you know, I hope that we're able to kind of show you those three pillars of the analysis, the verification and trust, and then also the enterprise readiness of Snowflake Intelligence can really help you accelerate your journey to having, you know, operational agents that are utilized and trusted by the business. Great. Thank you. I think up next we've got a panel discussion, and Nav, I think, will take the ball from there.